Virtual meeting. Thank you. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we're going to have a pledge of allegiance now. Thank you very much. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I'm now going to take a roll call. Counselor Waldman. All right, we're going to start. I see you, Counselor Lucero.
Here.
Counselor Knight.
Here.
Counselor Parker. Counselor Burkett.
Here.
Counselor Murray. I bet you they're just on their way.
I was in the holding room for like 5 minutes trying to get in, so I'm not
Okay,
sure. Yeah.
okay. So we're gonna, Melanie, do you see either Counselor Parker or Counselor Murray?
I believe I just let Counselor Murray in a moment
Okay.
ago,
There you are, Counselor Murray.
and Counselor
Present.
Parker should be in as
Yeah,
well.
I'm here.
Thank you, thank you. There's
Moving a
Counselor
little
Parker.
slower.
That's okay. That's okay. We did it. We did it. On approval, I have now taken the governing body on the approval of the agenda. I would like to make one possible amendment under new business, item 2, discussion of bond ordinances and future bonds. We're going to need to remove that item tonight, and we will have perhaps a special meeting, which we're in order to make sure that we get the final bond things put through for the bonds that are being issued right now for purchase of farmland. So with that amendment, the deletion of item 2 under new business, could I have a motion to amend the agenda? Approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the amended agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you so much. All right. Counselor Waldman? Counselor Murray?
Here.
Aye, right? We're just approving the amended agenda. Counselor Burkett? I know.
Aye.
Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Counselor Knight?
Aye.
Counselor Parker?
Aye.
And Counselor Waldman?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. So with that amendment, we'll move on to the administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor. First thing I'd like to do is ask Tanya to give a COVID update, please.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors, Administrator Curry. Thank you. COVID updates for today are not great. I'm going to start with the hospitalizations. We have 470 people in hospitalizations. The state's been tracking them regularly. I started tracking them in August, and this is our highest number of people in hospitals that I have on track. Today's meeting, they did say 90% of all hospitalizations are non-vaccinated, with 96.4% of those who die in New Mexico being unvaccinated. Vaccinations are definitely working when people get them, and I definitely will help anyone who has questions on vaccinations. For Corrales, today we got 3 additional cases. We have 14 cases for the month of November. In the last 10 days, 5 days, we've had 14 because they don't do weekend numbers. 10 days, we've had 18, and in 14 days, we've had 36 cases in Corrales. The R naught rate for spread in the state of New Mexico right now is 1.15, which means we're getting more, if a person gets COVID, they give it to more than one person. We really want to keep it below one as a good control measure. Sandoval County's test positivity rate has been going up. Sorry, I'm trying to find it on my computer. This week it was at 7.25. Last week it was at 6.9. So we are kind of tracking in that upward trajectory. The good news is pediatric vaccines 5 to 11 have been going really well. I'm going to be completely out of vaccine on Saturday. I have placed another order, keep checking to see if the state and the feds have approved it. Hopefully that'll happen sometime tonight. We have done 9,348 vaccines out of our little Corrales site as of today. I think that's really, really good for the staff that's doing it, the staff that's volunteering, the volunteers that are coming in. And one of the things we've got today in a meeting was really to start messaging. Why are we getting an uptick in cases? People need to start getting vaccinated. The number of unvaccinated is still at 27% of 18-year-olds are up, and they are still the driving force of higher case rates. We get your boosters. We do know that there's waning immunity after 6 months, that there's probably going to be a 3' to a 2' to a 3' series depending on the vaccine. And we know that vaccine-derived and natural immunity both wane over time. Vaccinations, like I said, are really preventing hospitalizations and deaths. But we want to really get these boosters, especially as we start moving indoors. Wear your mask, avoid crowds. People, what they think is causing part of this is people are feeling more confident. We've been dealing with this for almost 2 years now, and people are not wearing their masks, and people are starting to gather more in crowds, and that's what's driving our uptick. And we know that our highest case rates are going to be in the winter when we're all indoors. I will be happy to stand for questions.
Any questions for Commander Latin? Stuart Murray?
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. Commander, I know back in early October, we had the Balloon Fiesta. Is there any chance that particular mass event may be contributing to this?
I have seen no data that's come out on that mass event contributing to this. I do know people who went to Balloon Fiesta who did get COVID. I've talked to several people who had friends that came in and their friends got COVID. Did they get it at Balloon Fiesta? Did they get it at a restaurant? Did they get it hanging out with friends? There's the new modeling and case epidemiology reports are due out any day. They were last updated on October 26th. I'm hoping that gives us some insight. Balloon Fiesta could have driven that early part. So cases with Delta, usually infection can happen as early as 1 day. 3.7 days is the median time. They can happen as late as 14 days. So we're past that. And we did have a little surge, but not a huge surge, but hospitalizations go up 15 days. You either start feeling better by day 7 or 8, or you start going downhill and end up in the hospital.
Yeah, thank you, Commander.
20% of the cases right now are coming out of school or pediatrics, and they are attributing that to school.
Yeah, the other question I have is that, it seems like the state does not really give the public any indication of the breakthrough rate, versus what you were talking about, the 90% hospital rate being non-vaccinated. I mean, is there any way you can urge them to kind of include those numbers? Because
I got some numbers that the other day on one of my meetings, and I don't remember if it was a nationwide number or a state number. It's less than 25% are breakthrough.
Okay.
And most of those breakthroughs and most of those deaths are going to be in people who are immunocompromised, on steroids, older. We do know that if you're above 65, every year past 30, our immune system starts going, our whole body starts going down instead of staying in homeostasis. So the older we get, we do know that there's going to be breakthrough cases. And I've really been encouraging people who are older to really, really follow the safety protocols.
Yeah, I've had some friends that have contracted COVID after they've been vaccinated, but they've been telling us that their symptoms have been very mild. So the vaccinations obviously work, and we need to continue those vaccinations. But thank you very much for your work on this. Any
other questions for Commander Latin from the counselors? Okay, thanks as always, Commander. Really appreciate everything you're doing. You're going to bring us better news next time, right? Okay, let's have Ron, go ahead for the next item.
Okay, next item, I'd like to ask Chief Martinez to give a little update on some recycling.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I have coordinated with Rotor Waste. They're going to be mobilizing a small dumpster, as I explained at the last meeting, so we can start collecting glass. It's going to be located next to the courthouse, next to the other recycling bin that we have there. And we're hoping that we can get everything in place probably as early as next Monday.
That's great. Anybody have a question about that? All right, we're really looking forward to that, and we'll try to get some information out to the public about it so that we're hopeful about this project. Thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chief. Next person I'd like to come forth with some more good news is Michael Chavez.
Good evening, Councilor, Mayor, Administrator Curry. So as you know, this Sagebrush pedestrian bike trail, I guess it's been started like over 20 years ago. We were ready, pretty close to breaking ground in the spring, and then we had a hiccup with some of the funding. It's actually started. And if Melanie, if you could share the pictures I sent you.
I know.
So this was last Thursday. Go to the next one.
All
Next
right.
Friday. Next one,
Oh,
Monday. Next one. And this was this morning. So
all right.
they're moving right along. We're looking to probably maybe get it paved in about 3 weeks. There's a little holdup on the gabion baskets, so we won't quite finish that soon. But I'm real happy, real good pleasure to see it get going. Any questions?
I can't see people right now. Are any of the counselors, could you shout out if you have a question?
Yes, Mayor, it's Councilor Waldman.
Sure, go ahead, Counselor Waldman.
Yeah, it's actually not a question. I was, Michael, I was up there about 4 o'clock today, and it looks even better than what you showed.
Yeah.
Everything was silent. Yeah, the workers had left, but it's a smooth. So it's looking really good. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, it only took 20 years. I mean, you know, but it's very exciting news. So Michael will keep us updated so we can see the finished product. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Ron?
Chief Vic, do you have a good enough connection to make a presentation here for us?
I believe so. Ron, Mayor and Council, good evening.
Evening.
As everyone's aware, that we had our first homicide in the village. Is there a difficulty hearing me?
We can hear you fine.
It's okay.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Ron, Mayor and Council. As everyone's aware, about a little over a week ago, on October 30th of this year, we had our first homicide in the village since December 16th of 2002. And this took place on Camino de Corrales del Norte. The respondent Corrales police officers did exactly what they're trained to do and contained the situation and took the suspect into custody safely and efficiently, and immediately cordoned off the scene and started making the proper notifications. The New Mexico State Police sent their crime scene investigation team down to assist us. They were out there with us throughout the night, processing the scene and collecting the evidence. The district attorney's office, district attorney and an assistant prosecutor down to help us with the initial search warrant and guidance on the case. And that scene was processed efficiently. Numerous articles of evidence were seized. However, and although the suspect was taken into custody and booked right away, obviously there's still a lot of work to do. And so what we're doing at this point are continuing to work with the district attorney, the state police, and the Sandoval County Sheriff's Office executing additional warrants, including digital search warrants to obtain data to piece together all of the events surrounding this incident and leading up to the incident, as our goal is to prove a first-degree murder case beyond anyone's reasonable doubt. And obviously the family and the community deserve that much. And so I can't disclose very much more detail about the case, but the investigation is ongoing and active. And like I said, it's a multi-agency effort, and it's so far been a very seamless operation. We have just phenomenal cooperation with Sandoval County law enforcement.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor.
Understanding Chief's limitations about disclosing information, do any of the counselors have a question they would like to ask? Counselor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilor. I don't want to make myself a nuisance, but this is another issue, Chief, that has no relation at all to the case that you're doing. Is there any indication that there's racing going on at the south end of the village? Because we're hearing a lot of high-speed motor noise and tires squealing and everything else. I just wondered if there was a possibility that there's racing going on down on Corrales Road.
Councilor Murray, Mayor and Council, no recent complaints of street racing, drag racing, but there, for some reason, seems to be a huge uptick in these really loud cars. Predominantly teenage males have been driving around the entire metro area, and yeah, including whizzing by my backyard too. And so it's just one of those things that the officers are keeping an eye out for, but no organized or drag racing, street racing type of events that we're aware of.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Yeah, it's I know noise carries, and it's a big issue down here on the south end of the village. So it's anyway. Thank you for your help, and thank your officers for everything they're doing.
Thank you, Council.
Any other questions for Chief Manshikapra? Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. And next thing I'd like to report on is on our animal control. We and Chief Vic can comment on this as well if he wants. We've had some good positive discussions, and we've entered into an arrangement with the Animal Humane Association for care of our animals on a regular basis, and they follow the no-kill policy that the village of Corrales has had in place for a number of years. So we're excited to reestablish that relationship. And I don't know, Vic, if you wanted to add anything to that, but we've gotten some really nice commitments out of them, and we look like we're moving forward on that. In addition to that, we're making sure that if we need any additional drains or anything like that over in the Animal Services Division, we're getting that done in the building over there. So Vic, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Sure, Ron. Thank you, and Mayor and Council. So we have reestablished our relationship with Animal Humane, and like Ron said, that they're in agreement to abide by all of our animal ordinances pertaining to village transfers. And we're also back in touch with the Bernalillo County Animal Welfare Department to reach out to them as needed. And hopefully now that we have these two other options in place, neither will be needed and are definitely not as often there. We had just this huge uptick of animal intakes in the recent past. Just take them. Our understanding, though, is that most surrounding jurisdictions were in the same position. So our animal control officers did a phenomenal job of getting those animals cared for, and many of them placed and adopted or returned home. And so now we have at least a plan B and C, and we'll continue to search for other options, and we're open to any suggestions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the next thing I want to mention on a good note is November 19th. Don't forget, we have the time capsule that I have in my office now. The combination to open up the time capsule from 50 years ago, and
25 or whatever.
believe me, I'm not gonna do any sneak Geraldo events or anything like that in there, because I don't know what I'm gonna find. But it's coming on November 19th, and we're looking forward to having a nice ceremony prior to the Thanksgiving holiday. And then the last thing I want to mention, unless somebody else has any questions, if you look at our gross receipts tax income for the first 4 months of this fiscal year, We're up over 200,000, almost 250,000 in gross receipts tax revenue compared to what we were last year. So that's a good thing. Mayor, that's all I've got unless you have any other questions.
No, that's great. I just wanted to mention too, we don't know, we are going to put something back into this time capsule, folks. So if you have an idea, and please, there are certain limitations, size and good taste, etc. But if you have an item that you think belongs in that time capsule and that encapsulates our time right now, please let us know. Maybe send everything to Melanie, Lucky Melanie, and we'll see what kind of objects we can put back in on the 19th. Thank you very much. All right, the next item is the counselor's forum. This section is for information only, not for discussion and debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. Do I have any counselor who wishes to speak? Counselor Parker.
Mayor Rowe, councilors, I just wanted to let everybody know that our Sevilla High School volleyball team has made it to the state tournament.
All right.
They are the 4th seed and will start play on Friday. So send some positive vibes out to these young ladies who are working very hard. And then also just a shout out to the Corrales first responders. I think they're doing a great job right now. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor Parker. Any other counselors at this time? All right, I don't see any hands, so we'll move on to the Coriolanus Forum. This section is for information purposes only, not for discussion and debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. Melanie, who do we have for the Coriolanus Forum tonight?
First up, we have Mr. Kurt Flora.
Go ahead, Mr. Flora.
Good evening, councilors and mayor. Yeah, I wasn't planning on talking about what we're looking at now. Last meeting, you were there, the Open Meetings Act violations and all this kind of stuff. He stated 72 hours in advance that people are given notice. Well, I don't think that 10 minutes into a meeting is good enough 72 hours advance for advance notice being handed a packet 72 hours into, or 10 minutes into a meeting on it was April 19th, 2019 meeting. Speaking about meeting minutes and what needs to be put in meeting minutes and stuff like that, the truth needs to be put in the meeting minutes, not the falsified documents that have been put in the meeting minutes. You know, I'm here to expose the corruption in Corrales, and what is left out of the meeting minutes, including right here, a motion that was put in the meeting minutes. Mr. Sawina says that he puts the plat submitted to us drawing dated October 5th, 2018. That should have been in the meeting minutes. It was not on Lori's meeting minutes. So that raised a problem in district court where the judge says, well, there wasn't anything said about the 20-foot road. Well, it was said about it because it was said it was on the plat dated October 5th. That proves that the 20-foot was there. Again, I would like to also bring up an email from Lori Stout. The village expects a 30-foot wide road easement. This was after 3.5 hours or more of discussion on the road easement and was approved with a 5-2 vote with a 20-foot road. Now, for her to send an email almost 3 weeks after the meeting stating the village expects this to be done, a 30-foot road easement, this tells me that there was communication between somebody in the village and Lori, or she's acting as czar of the village. So yeah, that's telling me that. So, and then we got Okay, attorney-client privilege that was brought up. Attorney-client privilege pertains to an email that we did not receive, the village attorney opinion letter that our meeting was tabled because the village attorney opinion was asked. When we asked for it, IPA requested
Thank you,
it,
Mr.
we were
Flory. Your
denied
time
it.
is up.
Okay, let me go on. We were denied
Thank you.
that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Your time is
Where we
up.
at?
Thank you for your
The
input, Mr.
corruption in
Flora.
Corrales.
Please mute him. Thank you. Who else do we have tonight, Melanie?
I did get a request from a Elaine Manicki. She didn't specify what portion of the meeting she wanted to speak at. So I'm not sure if she is available, if she wants to speak now or later.
I am available, and I did want to talk about passing ordinances 2139, 2140, and amending 2106.
Okay, I think maybe, Ms. Manicki, maybe then you would prefer to speak when those items come up. Is that
That'll be
acceptable?
fine, Mayor.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then I have one other email that I have been asked to read.
Okay.
This is from David and Suzanne Williams.
Okay.
The email says, "We are residents of Corrales del Norte. Our message is short. We have been overlooked and abandoned by our council for long enough. It is time for you to pay attention to the residents that are paying the price for one family to prosper greatly. We invested in this neighborhood and now our investment is suffering, and we can add violent crime to that long list. Respectfully, David and Suzanne Williams."
Thank you very much. If
And
that's
that is it.
all right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the village council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. The item is the approval of minutes for October 26, 2021 regular council meeting. Do I have a motion regarding the minutes?
I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes.
Thank you very much, Zach. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. I think that's Councilor Lucero.
Second.
Oh, we have a third. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, let's take a roll call vote in order to approve the minutes. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move into new business now. And the first item on new business is another presentation from Mr. Cog on Chapter 18 Steering Committee work. As you know, that's a multi-month project in which we have been clarifying, editing, and cleaning up our land use regulations. Ms. Borg, there you are. I'm going to give the floor to you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the
Welcome.
governing body. Thank you all for being here tonight. So our original plan was to split this into 3 parts and review this kind of bit by bit. And we went through sort of the first third at the last meeting. Because of some time constraints, we're going to try to get through the rest of this for review in this meeting, and then in December, hopefully come for approval. We do have until January, so we can kind of push that date out a little bit if need be. So really, I think you all received a packet with all of the updates, and hopefully you've had some time to review it. So I won't, in the interest of time, really walk through all of these changes. There are a few things that I do want to mention because I think they're a little bit beyond the scope of what we were tasked with and may sort of be going more into a policy change. So one of those things is a sort of expansion of the allowable uses. So what we did was previously the code really only allowed for exactly what was listed in every zoning district as a use. And so now we've given a little bit more sort of leeway for Lori and the Planning and Zoning Commission and the members of this board to evaluate things, you know, based on NAICS codes or whatever. Just some flexibility in the uses. You know, so for instance, if the code previously had said barber shops were a permissive use and someone wanted to open a salon, like maybe the code didn't exactly allow for that. And now you have that flexibility. We did remove the special use permit completely from the code, and that was based on the fact that it just is never used. And so there was some language in there that had to do with special use permits that was completely deleted. And last, we modified the nonconformities section based on some concerns from the planning and zoning department about non-conforming lot size. And so we did add a provision that would allow people to develop these smaller lots under 1 acre, but the Village of Corrales will now require an advanced treatment septic system for lots under 1 acre. And that's really to, really preserve the water quality for your village. But that is a little bit beyond than just sort of the text changes and kind of clarity things that we've been doing. So I just want to kind of bring those to the forefront and then just really open it up for any discussion and questions that you all may have.
Yes, Councillor Knight, I'm sure you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and councilors. I had a question about the deleted of that the special use permit is deleted. We have used that in the past for like say the Wagner's farmland experience. That was a special use permit. So now people won't get to have that.
I don't know, Lori, if you want to tackle that. I don't know if it was that everything is sort of handled through the development review permit.
Councillor Knight, councilors, mayor. So as far as the planning and zoning department is concerned, we still have the site development plan process. We, in my department, we've never had in our fees, a fee for a special use permit. We've never had an actual application in my department. Now, I do know that Wagner's goes through I believe they actually go through the clerk's office and the police department to put on their event, possibly the fire department as well. So these events will still be vetted. But as far as my department is concerned, everything either goes through the site development plan process, which is before Planning and Zoning Commission, or there are other applications such as, home occupations, smaller platting, those kinds of things that have their own special applications. But we've never had, since I've been here, an actual special use permit application or a fee on my fee schedule. We've always done site development plans.
Okay, that was probably before you were P&Z administrator, because I was on planning and zoning when that came before the planning and zoning when the Wagners had to get a special use permit. And that's what was the thing that really helped them get through the process, because there was a special use permit.
Well, we can certainly reestablish. So like I said, I have a fee schedule that is a resolution that was passed by Village Council in 2016. And for whatever reason, there is no special, that's not on there for some reason. And then in my list of very extensive list of applications, there's no such application. So that's odd. It must have dropped off, and I can certainly look into it and find if there is another form that was used in the past. We can certainly revive it and the process and whatever fees were being charged.
Okay. I know they probably had to do a site plan, but there was some neighbors that did not want that. And that's how it got to P&Z.
Yeah, there is actually a process, and it's essentially a site development plan process, and they've got to show traffic flow, they've got to show parking. All of those things are encompassed in the site development plan. Noise, odor effects on adjoining properties, just in general. That's all in there in the site development plan process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, it is a little disturbing to me because I have had to work with that process before, and that enabled the family to go ahead and As a matter of fact, there was only 2 people on P&Z that recommended the special use permit, and then they appealed, and it had to go in front of the council, and the council okayed it. But that's how the process worked back then. So
Yeah. I can assure you that site development plan is exactly the same process. It literally in the code had the same, exactly the same requirements, which is why it was odd that there's these 2 functions that are identical. And in the ordinance, like I said, the resolution rather that sets out the fees that I'm allowed to charge for various applications in 2006 or 2016, that's not on there. So I thought that was rather odd. But if someone such as the Wagners came to us and said, we want to do this thing, they would do a site development plan. It would go before Planning and Zoning Commission. And if it were appealed, it would then go before the village council. Same process exactly.
okay, I just want to have some different avenues just in case it comes up again. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Waldman?
Yes, Ms. Borg, I have a question about section 18-38, dealing with senior housing, senior living. I raised a question at the last meeting you made presentation regarding facilities for seniors to live in. I think you interpreted my question incorrectly, perhaps. I was not looking for a facility for senior living, but rather independent living by seniors. And I guess my specific question would be, based on your experience either here or elsewhere, is it possible for the village to establish rules and regulations that could limit a certain housing section, clustered housing, whatever it may be, to a certain population of 55 plus?
I think that would be very difficult to do. I think that I think it would just be a little bit of a kind of a tricky territory if you're starting to say, you know, you're allowed to do this if you're of a certain age. If I'm understanding you correctly, like the law would read cluster development is allowed for senior housing only type of thing.
Well, it's a number of developments in Albuquerque and across the country advertise they are 55 plus communities. And I'm wondering if that is something that should be in our land use plan or developed separately, how that might work.
Just sort of promoting yourself as a senior community, or?
No, I think he's talking about having, sure, I'm sorry to speak for you, but I think what he's talking about is having facilities, having group homes here that are for seniors, are for people 55 and above.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have requirements for senior living facilities separately than other things. I mean, keeping in mind that something that would be considered maybe like a group home is going to have to be allowed no matter what. But you know, I think senior living facilities is defined currently, and there is some language in here that, or I'm not sure if we removed it based on comments previously, but there was some language in here for senior living facilities that was very, very hard to accomplish, that required large amounts of land and things like that.
That's how you responded, that it requires 15 acres, and that's not what I'm referring to.
Okay.
Perhaps we can deal with this at another time, but
okay.
Not a senior living facility, but a cluster housing for seniors, independent living, not assisted living, not a senior living facility, but that.
With higher density, Councillor Waldman, are you talking about higher density? We'll talk about it later. But
yeah, we have a proposal that's been going on for 20 years now in the village. And
right.
I'm just wondering, in terms of how this might fit in to our Chapter 18, and if it's necessarily part of that, or a separate discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I wonder if it would almost be, it's funny enough, the special use permit or some kind of special use zoning that was attributed to that particular parcel of land that would be one way that you could do it. I think if you did it with a sort of blanket zoning, you could find yourself in a lot of hot water. But if you did it specific to the land, it would be better.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I've also received a question regarding the advanced treatment units that would be required, and what would that look like? What kind of requirements are you talking about? Because that is a change for us.
Yeah, so we added some definitions of advanced treatment septic and conventional septic to the definitions section. And those are definitions straight from the NMED. You know, to my understanding and my sort of reading of the laws of what the NMED requires, they really do require an advanced treatment septic system for lots that are under an acre. But I think what's been happening, you know, according to Lori, is that this is sort of inconsistently regulated. And so it's probably better for the village to require it than sort of relying on the NMED, because they're not really enforcing these rules.
What kind of cost do you think that's going to impose upon owners of non-conforming lots?
I mean, to my understanding, advanced septic is more expensive, but in terms of how much more, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions tonight for them? Yes, Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. So I noticed that the landscaping requirements have been moved. So you've kind of put that off into a separate area. So is that correct?
Yes, we took all of the landscaping requirements that were repeated throughout the individual zoning districts and just moved it into, I believe it's 1840. So you have residential and non-residential landscaping requirements in one single section.
So you did not require minimum of live plant material in the definition, is that correct? And why not? Because then you could just go to xeriscaping, you know, basically, you know, the entire property if you wanted. I mean, if you want to spend that kind of money.
I'm sorry, I'm not really sure what you're asking. You're asking for.
Okay, so one of the comments was the definition of landscape in 1829 was not amended to require a minimum of live plant material to the definition. So by this definition, it could result in gravel being used to meet the landscaping, including buffers in each zone. I think we have a certain requirement for that you have to plant a certain amount of that. It used to be about 15%, I think, even in the commercial area.
So you'd like to see that added to the definitions?
Yes, I think we need
Okay.
to. Also, churches kind of concerns me too, because there was a question about, since you've added that a use by review, could a mega church come in and be approved by that use by review? Because we never had that before.
So there's, you know, you have to allow churches anywhere. I mean, that's federal law. So adding them as a use by review allows the village to be able to make sure that they have parking, that they're, you know, there's not traffic problems. And you're allowed to do that, but you're not allowed to say that churches aren't allowed in any district ever.
Okay, also under the historic zone, I noticed that you struck out the section D that prohibited cannabis production, which we just approved the last, I think back in August. Under agricultural uses, where did it? I take that back. Okay, never mind. I think you just reworded it somehow.
Never mind.
Yeah, never mind. Also, I understand that you had discussion about short-term rentals and about how many occupants we ought to allow. There was some discussion, maybe 4 bedrooms or maybe 4.6 occupants or something like that. What's your thought on that?
Well, I would really leave that at the pleasure of the governing body. You know, we're really here to kind of clean up the code and make it more readable. So, you know, it was suggested by the working group and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission that be reduced. And if you want to do that as part of codifying these changes, that would be, you know, up to you.
Okay. Is also, I probably missed this in the last presentation, but didn't you strike site development plans from the, under the A1 and A2?
No, there's certain uses that are strict, sort of permissive by right, and then there's uses by review that require site development plans.
Okay. Well, I've got a list and I'll email you when I get everything put together. So let you know what I thought.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your feedback.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, we did have a message in our chat regarding the septic systems that
Yes.
it adds between 10,000 to 20,000 per system.
Okay, thank you. And then I think maybe our village administrator had a question about that as well. Ron?
Mayor, I was just concerned about the actual requirement coming from the environment department to have an advanced system. Is that something that comes from them that's requiring it, or is there something that we need to introduce as an ordinance within the village?
Well, I don't know off the top of my head. What do you think, Ms. Borg? Is that something that we're going to need to do by ordinance? It's just back.
Yeah, well, what we had suggested is adding the language to chapter 8, which is your building permit section.
Okay.
And then adding it to this section. You know, whether that needs to be a separate ordinance, I think, you know, is up to you. But it would be codified as part of this.
Okay, so it would be codified.
My
Yes,
only
go ahead.
concern, without getting too far into the weeds here, is that the cost between an advanced system and a regular system is so dramatic that I don't want to put the village in a situation where they're requiring something that is out of the range of possibilities financially for a lot of people within the village.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Counselor, I'm sorry, Randy.
That's
Counselor.
okay.
Counselor, just not spelled differently, yes.
Spelled differently, different hat. So on that issue, Mr. Administrator, the issue becomes that you need a minimum size of lot for a septic system. The state will not approve you unless you have, I believe, and Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 3/4 of an acre. So if you're smaller than that size, you cannot build in Corrales unless you use some system like this. Because if they're not connected to a sewer system, which very few of our residents have that opportunity, if any, you would need to use a system like this in order to be able to build if you have a small lot. So we wouldn't be being punitive, it would be actually allowing a use to occur where it otherwise couldn't occur.
Thank you, Randy. That's important.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Borg?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Parker.
Yeah, Mayor Roque, councilors, Ms. Ford and Ms. Stout, I'm confused. Are we leaving the special use permit process in? And if we are not, how can we keep it in? Because I think that special use permit, although hasn't been used in the village, I think the potential for it to be used as our zoning issues are coming to light for a number of items is a useful tool that can provide a lot of solutions for some very complicated situations. And so how might we leave that in there and find a new application process in there? But I just didn't know if we decided that it's going to stay.
Well, I think that's up to you. You know, until this meeting, I didn't know that this process had been used before. My understanding was that it was really either obsolete or had never been used before. So I'm glad that there's some history here to know that this is a useful process and maybe we just put it back in.
Yeah, I think the case could be made that it hasn't been used, so get rid of it. But just because it hasn't been used doesn't mean that we shouldn't have it there for the potential to being used. Like I said, especially as things are becoming very complicated in the village in terms of zoning ordinances. So, and I personally would like to see it remain.
Thank you very much. I think we have had kind of a lot of discussion on that, so perhaps you should try to find a way to go ahead and reinstate the special permit use.
Mayor, this is Councilor Murray. One more question for Randy and maybe Ron.
Running low. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, Councilor. So if we were to run the effluent line up to, say, I think it's Mountain Shadows and over in the Priestley area, would the advanced treatment system really be needed? Could we get by with just a regular holding tank and then let the effluent line carry the, the septic out?
It's a good question, Councilor Murray. I don't hold myself out as an expert on type of sewer or septic systems, but the key is that currently, if you are not close to a sewer line, then there is no other way to do your sewage on a smaller lot. So if there is a sewer line in close proximity, then that might be viable. But that would be something that we would have to look at with an expansion of our sewer system. And then we could relook at this ordinance if it was pertinent and we had some availability for residences to use sewer line.
Yeah, I think it would be an option. I think it's been proposed that maybe that effluent line may be extended to those areas where we have less than an acre, sites. So thank you.
Mayor and councilors, we have another message in the chat that says under 18-33D density, it says they have the maximum density shall be limited to 1 dwelling unit per net acre.
Yes.
And this person believes it should read gross acre.
All right, Ms. Borg?
I will look at that. I don't have it right here on top of, but I will look at that for sure.
Okay, thank you.
That's current language in the code. And net and gross are essentially the same. If you have a road dedication, then what you have left over is your net acreage.
Does that clarify it? Does it need further clarification?
Chair,
Yes.
I think the key is that we have throughout the village 1 acre lots that had part of that 1 acre dedicated to roads, and therefore for a 1 DU per acre, it means the entire acre, including the roads, which would be the gross acreage. So I think let's take a look at the language and just make sure we're defining it properly so that we aren't excluding or saying that these 0.85 acre lots are somehow illegal.
Yeah, Mayor, this is Councilor Murray. Let me add on to
Councilor
that,
Murray.
too. Thank you. Yeah, some of that discussion got into, like Randy was talking about, we did not want to create substandard lots, which were, with private roads, you include that in your acreage. Then you want to go public. Well, then now you're creating a substandard lot if they want to take that road public. And I think the idea behind this was, let's make it a net acre for your dwelling unit. Then there's no argument.
I think Randy's writing that down. Does that make sense to you, Ms. Borg? Is that something you can work with as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, Mayor, I'm speaking
ahead.
over,
No.
I'm speaking over someone, but we'll take a look at it. I'll work with Lori and you, Ms. Borg, because we just want to make sure we know what we're talking about with it. It is a very important subject, given that it applies to so many lots in Corrales.
Yeah, we fought net versus gross in 2018.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Borg from Councilor?
Mayor, I have 2 quick things.
Yes, Councilor Burkett.
First one is just a definition for advanced septic treatment. the definition we have says means of a wastewater treatment that removes a greater amount of contaminants than accomplished with a conventional system. That seems very, very vague and very easy to qualify for. If you could show you're in any way better than a conventional system, by our definition, you would be an advanced septic system. So I don't know if there's more technical specifics we can put into that, but I'd like to see maybe some exploration on it. And then the second thing, just to make sure I'm not misunderstanding, under non-conforming lots, are we no longer going to have a minimum lot size? It looks like we're requiring these advanced septic systems on anything below 3/4 of an acre. But it looks like any previously recognized and platted lot is going to become buildable. Is that accurate?
Counselor Audio?
Madam Mayor, Councilor Burkett, the issue arises if you have a legal lot, it runs into an issue of a appropriate and ability to use your property and put it to use. If the problem with our prior definitions where we got into this struggle of we were asking zoning enforcement to stop people from essentially using their lot for a building of any dwelling unit, even if they could deal with the septic through the method that we're incorporating here. And the reality is we would be potentially taking their property use away from them if we didn't allow those legal existing lots. We don't have to approve new ones, but legal existing lots we would be applying this new standard to. So you are correct.
Okay, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but they would have to meet the other qualifications, the other codes as far as setbacks, well location, all those other things would still be in place. And then the other question along those lines is anything before the effective date of this article, are we leaving a window open for people to go make some smaller lots and have them approved before the effective date of this article? Could we change that to the first public display of this article?
I think, Counselor, what we're going to have to do is we'll look at that definition. I agree with you. That is of concern, and we'll figure out the best way to make sure we understand what we're talking about as to what lots it applies to.
Thank you, Counselor Burkett. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that was a good discussion. I would ask that counselors who have additional questions, please forward them to, would you like them to go to Lori? Would you like them to come to you, Ms. Borg? Where would you like those to land?
You can send them right to me. I can put my email in the chat if that would be the best way.
Sure. I'd appreciate that. That's great. Thank you. All right. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Borg. Thank you for your work, Peyton. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you, Lori. All the members of the committee that have been working on these changes for months. I appreciate all your hard work. We have a citizen committee, and I think everybody needs to know they've put in their time. So thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
You're welcome. Item number 2 has been removed from the agenda. So we're now going to move on to item number 3, and I'm going to ask Counselor Audio to kind of give us some context, and then we'll move into public comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councilors. As you know, that we have been in discussions for quite some time about the requirements of the state cannabis laws and how they affect our village and what we can do about them. This piece of potential legislation was proposed in a slightly different form by Councilor Murray, and then we did a analysis of it to look at what the best method of putting a moratorium in place over cannabis uses, commercial cannabis uses in A1 and A2 zones. What we came up with was, we believe, reasonable in the sense that it is related to an identifiable potential risk of these cannabis grows near residences, and we've so defined it in this proposal. One issue with any moratorium is we are interfering with someone's use of their land. And because of that, we want to do it as narrowly as possible. We have placed a 90-day limit in the draft moratorium. That's much longer than in some cases, and much shorter than others. So we do want to discuss what amount of time would be the least amount of time we could put in, so that we would interfere with the property rights of those individuals who would want to apply for licenses in those areas during that period. So we don't want to impose an overly long period of time. Moratoriums are a legal use. We did one not too long ago on single dwelling units and on casitas and so forth. And so it is a legal method we can take, but because we are interfering with property rights, we want to do it as narrowly as possible. So that's the background of this. And what this would do, it would give us time to craft specific legislation as broadly as we can under the requirements of the state law. The state law, as we've discussed many times, specifically allows for this commercial cannabis growth to occur in agricultural zones. And the state, we do not want the state or an individual to be harmed by this, sue the village if we enact a legislation that's too broad, and potentially collect damages from the village because we overreached. So the idea of the moratorium would be to craft the best law we could with all the data that we can gather and the examples that we've already been identifying from other states. So I just wanted to give that context, and then I'm sure we'll have more discussion with council and Councilor Murray's view on this after public comment.
All right, we're going to move into public comment now. Melanie, would you please let us in on who's wanting to comment on this item?
Madam Mayor and councilors, the first up is Jay Block. Mr. Block, are you on? I did get notice that he might not be able to make the meeting. So if he is not here, we will move on to Mr. George Wright. Mr. Wright, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I agree with this concept of moratorium. We did use this concept when we did 18002, and there we had to redo that resolution, I think 3 times, because we put too few of days in it. And so my suggestion was that we approve this moratorium, but maybe the council considering extending that instead of making it smaller, maybe to 120 or 180 days. Now, this moratorium, as I understand it, does not prevent them from applying. We're just putting a moratorium on processing that license until we get this A1, A2 question sorted out. So that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Next, we have Diana Keller. Okay, sounds like she might not have been able to make the meeting. Mr. Fred Hashimoto.
Yeah, thank you.
Sir, you have 3 minutes.
And Councilor, please pass this resolution for the 90-day moratorium. It affords some needed breathing space and time in this very rushed process. That being said, 90 days go fast when there is only one meeting scheduled between now and January 11th, and only 3 meetings before the 90 days are up. Please act decisively to amend our current cannabis ordinance in order to protect the residential neighborhoods, which comprise 97% of the village, from invasive and unwanted commercial cannabis activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hashimoto.
Okay, next I have Miss Kathleen Streeb.
Yes, thank you, counselors and mayor, for your time and hard work on this issue. And I support the passing of Resolution 2139 and this moratorium, and for a minimum of 90 days, maybe even 180 days, because of the issues with the law put down from the state. You don't need to be under this kind of pressure. We need to work it out. We have Damon Eli, one of our Corrales residents, who is active in Santa Fe as our representative. We can work with him and work with the state. So my biggest concern is you talk about a time capsule. This is up to you. There is such a time as this. It is up to you to decide what Corrales is going to look like. And I want you to put in this time capsule to pass these laws and resolutions to protect our community from the commercial cannabis activities. And one picture, now picture a beautiful scenery we have. And now we've got greenhouses all over. Our community has changed. The state law requires, if you have cannabis registration, you have to have a sign. You have to have you have to have a big fence. You can have security guards carrying guns. And I don't know about you, but I don't want this in my backyard. I worked hard to live in Corrales. And you know what? I don't want a view of a cannabis farm with security guards and fencing and a sign. The requirement says you have to have a sign that states, and you have to have 24-hour surveillance with lighting. That will affect our dark skies we have here. It will completely change our village. So your vote and your efforts on this, and I don't think we should fear the state. You are leaders, we've elected you, and I think you need to stand strong for our people and protect zoning sections A1 and 2 from cannabis commercial activity. And I appreciate your help and your vote.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Elaine Manicki.
Please go ahead.
You have 3 minutes.
Elaine, you need to unmute yourself if you're still there.
Okay, got it?
Yes.
I don't know where my camera is. Can you see me?
No.
Oh,
But we can hear you.
okay.
But we
good.
can hear you.
Okay, very good. But I do have my pearls on anyway.
Well, good.
I would like to know, I would like to ask you all to consider some questions. Will the village ordinances conflicting with state requirements for marijuana growing be abandoned to comply with state marijuana law? Who will be responsible for usurping the village comprehensive plan that seeks to preserve farmland? Who will be held responsible for any adverse actions or harm that may come to the village or individuals from these commercial enterprises? Why does the village have fencing and wall definitions for property facing Corrales Road, night sky and lighting ordinances, rules for signs and advertising in the village? We all know the answers. There's a concern to preserve the rural quality and cultural heritage of the village. Will the state or the village be responsible for contaminated groundwater, crime, less reliable electrical power, noise, noxious fumes, depreciating property values? Will there be an environmental impact study done on each of these permits granted? Is there a cap on the number of permits? Can an individual sue the village for the abandonment of its protective ordinances? Unlike Colorado, New Mexico did not allow for municipalities to opt out of having commercial industrial marijuana grown within its limits. We must rely on you, this governing body that is up close and personal to us, because not only does it affect us, but it affects you and your families. Chaos and uncertainty are not healthy for the vision of the village or the well-being of the residents. Two things to be reminded. Marijuana remains illegal on the federal government register as a Schedule I drug. The commercial industrial growing of marijuana is considered and insured business commercial, not agricultural. Does the state have a leg to stand on to coerce every municipality to permit these commercial industrial businesses in residential areas? I would say they don't. Please pass these ordinances, and yes, in consideration, take your time to think this very carefully through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're muted, Melanie.
Sorry.
That's
Thank
okay.
you. I do have 5 different statements that were emailed to me. The first is from Vicky Reeder. She lives at 19 Santa Maria. She says, I am writing to support the 90-day moratorium on applications for licensing or permitting new commercial cannabis activities. Ordinance 2106 appears not to be final. Tonight's agenda includes a discussion of proposed amendments to the ordinance and a resolution 2140 that would also amend the ordinance. The governing body needs 90 days to amend Ordinance 2106. New Mexico has broadly legalized marijuana businesses through the legislative process rather than by voter-approved ballot initiative, and Corrales already has at least 2 intensive agricultural sites that grow marijuana. We rely on our village government and zoning ordinances to protect us from things like stinky marijuana processing in our neighborhoods. People come to live in Corrales because of the beautiful sandias, the quality of life, and safety. We love our gentle little farm town. We hope we can keep it that way. I assume that unless the moratorium passes, Ordinance 2106 without amendments will be in effect immediately, and new commercial cannabis activities can begin in the A1, A2, and commercial zones as soon as the state and village have approved applications. Is that true? I believe 2106 is not ready. Please, let's give the governing body time to do their work. The next statement.
Thank you very much.
The next statement was from Court Kuntz. And her statement reads, Mayor and council members, my family has lived at the north end of Corrales since 1947. We have watched it grow from a sleepy little farming village of approximately 600 residents to now more than 8,000. In the early 80s, we sold the northern 60 acres of our 180-acre farm to be developed as a high-end residential area. Underground utilities, paved roads, and minimum 2-acre lots to limit the density, a very much sought attribute in Corrales. It was never intended to be a commercial horse boarding facility and was especially never intended to be a marijuana growing facility. The north half of the property is now like a prison, high metal fences and security gates. You can't even see it. Certainly nothing scenic about it. Me, my wife, and I, and all of our neighbors have been subjected to an increased traffic flow, not at safe speeds, trash along our streets, horrendous cannabis smell, and a major and very tragic crime. It may not be directly related to the pot operation, but if you swim with sharks, you're going to get bitten. One of our neighbors was told by a weapon-drawn police officer to go home and lock her doors. A Halloween party for small children was occurring just down the street at the time of the crime. All very disturbing and unsettling to everyone who lives here. 2 of our neighbors have sold their homes because of the pot facility and or the newly inactive and very permissive Ordinance 2106. What do you think all of this has done to our property values? Realtors now not only disclose the existence of the facility, but also the crime. Probably nothing a potential buyer would want to hear. We have been seriously damaged financially and mentally. This is what our village government is supposed to protect us from. All of us were here before, some way before any of this occurred. We have had no say, nor were we even asked if a commercial pot facility could be built in the very middle of our neighborhood. It would behoove the council and mayor to look into just how that facility came into being. A permit for a 10,000 square foot greenhouse was issued in late 2017, not a permit for a 10,000 square foot greenhouse to grow commercial or medical marijuana. The village enacted 1802 in early 2018, restricting pot from the A1 and A2 zones before the greenhouse was built. Grandfathered has been bandied around by village officials. I'd like for someone to let me know who is the grandfather. Please see your way to pass Resolution 2139, creating a 90-day moratorium on applications for licensing or permitting commercial cannabis activities, and Resolution 2140, directing publishing and posting of meeting to consider adoption of an ordinance, amending Ordinance 2106, prohibiting the production, manufacture, and retail of cannabis and cannabis products in the A1 and A2 zones. What has happened to us in Corrales del Norte should not happen to the rest of our Corleños. Okay.
Thank you.
Next, we have a statement from Aaron Williams from 53 Camino de los Arboles. It says, Mayor and council members, I have been subjected to increased traffic, speeding and unsafe, trash and bottles along our streets, horrendous cannabis smell, along with recent violent crime in my neighborhood, which seemingly is related to the commercial cannabis growing facility located in Corrales del Norte. Please see your way to pass Resolution 2139, creating a 90-day moratorium on applications for licensing or permitting commercial cannabis activities, and Resolution 2140, directing publishing and posting of meeting to consider adoption of an ordinance amending Ordinance 2106. It's time to start taking care of your community before it's too late. Next statement is from Hope Gray. Dear Mayor and council members, I am urging you to pass two important items on your agenda, items number 3 and number 5 under new business. You have permitted a terrible thing to happen in my once peaceful neighborhood, a cannabis farm across the street, and now the murder of Spencer, the farm manager. I moved here 31 years ago to a beautiful, peaceful place with good neighbors, trees, and horses. Now, with all the traffic, steel fences, and the smell of pot, I don't feel safe in my home anymore. Not what I ever dreamed would happen here. Please pass items number 3 and number 5 under new business. This will protect others from what has happened in the Corrales del Norte neighborhood. And finally, this is the last email that was sent from Gail Bacon. She lives at 116 Camino Rio del Sol. In reference to new business item number 3, please approve Resolution 2139, which would create a moratorium in the village of Corrales for the period of 90 days pertaining to the applications for licensing or permitting of commercial cannabis activities in the village. And she has more to say under item 5 that I will save for that.
Thank you very much, Melanie.
Thanks.
All right. Counselor Audio, did you have anything that you wanted to say before, in response to those items before we get into discussion with the counselors and move forward on this item?
Madam Mayor, councilors, we have been talking about this for quite some time, and the feelings and very legitimate concerns of village members have been duly noted and understood. My job is to counsel you on the scope and breadth of the state law that was passed and what our role is. We are not an independent state like a Indian reservation might be within the United States that can pass its own laws. We are a creature of state law. And just as these citizens who are speaking of their property rights to be free from noxious uses of other property surrounding them, the people in Corrales who would wish to grow cannabis on their agricultural land have been given a right by state law. And that's what we have to balance. A simple ban is putting the village at great risk of potential claims by those property owners who wish to proceed with these grows. And part of my duty as the attorney for the village is to look to the risk that the village would be facing in doing that. It's not as if we have a choice. It's not as if these councilors that you elected have a choice to ban it or not without consequence. If there is action taken to flat out ban growing any commercial marijuana in A1 and A2 zones, it will likely be challenged and will likely be overturned given the state of our law at this time. I'm the bearer of bad tidings in that way, I understand. We listened to the municipal league last week, and there were 3 lawyers from that were brought to that forum talking about this issue and coming to the same conclusion that I'm coming to. It is not a matter of personal opinion or the way each of us is reading the law. The law is very straightforward the way the state has written it. It may not be a good law, that's not for me to determine, but it is the law of the land at the present time. And so we can work with our state legislature to try to change it. We can regulate within the bounds of that law as best we can. And that's what I've been encouraging the village to do. If a ban is passed, then I think that the municipal league will, who is our insurer, by the way, will have some serious risk on their hands, and our insurance may not cover all damages that would be imposed. And if they're significant enough, the only option, if there's not enough money in our current budget to cover it and it's not insured, those damages would be placed on the tax rolls and paid for by the citizens of the community. That's not I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying that is a potential outcome and something that we all just need to be aware of. It is not done lightly, that I recommend that we move forward cautiously. And that's all I would like to say at this time.
All right, thank you, Counselor.
Madam Mayor, if
Yes.
I may, I had a boo-boo. I did have one other villager that had sent me an email this morning before the 12 o'clock deadline, and I just overlooked him. Is it possible for him to speak?
Sure.
Okay,
I don't want
thank you.
anybody to feel they're not being heard.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Wertz, you have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mayor and councilors. I'm going to read this in order to move quickly and keep within my 3 minutes. My name is Frank Wertz. I'm a resident of Corrales at 102 Targeta Road. I'm here to speak in support of Resolution 21-39. Some of you know that I was previously a village planning and zoning commissioner, and I served as a volunteer with both councilors Murray and Knight. Our community has significantly changed over the last 20 years. The desired uses of our village lands have evolved very rapidly. One of the significant challenges in being a steward within planning and zoning is that the application of the ordinances that we have are somewhat nebulous in their construction, and they're also antiquated in their original intentions. Our history in Corrales is based agriculturally. However, that is no longer the case, as the majority of our residents now use their properties residentially, and agriculture is not a primary means of provision for us. So we do appreciate the rural nature. However, as we've grown, we're now starting to bump elbows. Light pollution is a frequent complaint. Noise is up, water table is down. My own well dropped 16 feet in 12 years in the last check. Views are becoming scarce, and we have a common recurring concern with air quality emissions from Intel. Along with smokestack scrubber emission problems, late night sewage discharges from Rio Rancho, wastewater processing failures, concerns about septic contaminations and now ATUs in high density population areas, and even rumors of some of the radiation issues in the monitoring wells in Corrales. Many, if not all of these items were never considered when our original permissive use ordinances were created. Certainly, it was never considered that the shift to allow recreational use of a Schedule I drug would show up as a permissive use, allowing commercial cultivation in zones which are overwhelmingly residential within Corrales. Let's completely put aside any biases, either for or against, regarding the use of cannabis, and specifically evaluate the situation pragmatically. We moved entirely too quickly to remove cannabis restrictions, and the result is that we've exposed our residents to risk. risk of a loss of water table, loss of quality of life due to noxious emissions, risk of grave financial loss to property values as well. I've reviewed 2139 and it seems to be well written. I'm here to encourage you to pass at least a 90-day moratorium and subsequently use that time to very carefully evaluate how and where to properly allow or disallow commercial cultivation of cannabis in Corrales. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wertz. All right, at this point, I think we should open discussion on this item. I think appropriately, do I have a motion on this?
Mayor, this is Councilor Murray. Mayor, I move that we approve resolution 2139.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Councilor Lucero. All right, I'm now going to open this for discussion.
Mayor, this is
yes.
Councilor Murray. So, yes, the moratorium I think is needed. The only problem I have now is that it was pointed out to me by former Councilor Fred Hashimoto that we only have 3 meetings between now and the expiration of that moratorium if it passes. That's probably not enough time to really flesh out anything. I would support increasing that maybe by 5 days or so that we include at least a 4th council meeting and give us a chance for publishing and posting anything that comes up. We don't have a problem between now and December about publishing and posting, or in December publishing and posting until January. But when we get into January, we get our dual meetings, anything proposed in January, we're going to have an issue with. And so I would support, amending this moratorium to include at least 5 more days or longer if other councilors wish.
All right, thank you, Councilor Murray. Councilor Knight? Oh, you're muted. Muted. You're muted.
I agree that 90 days at this time of the year when we don't have a meeting, and then our legislators are only meeting 30 days in January, that doesn't give us a whole lot of time. I'm thinking 120 days, 4 months instead of 3.
I think that we did get the opinion, the legal opinion, which I had forwarded to all of you from the state attorney who works for the municipal league. Did you all get that? Because his concept was that 90 days is 60 days too long. Just going to tell you that he did not recommend that we pass this. He had some concerns. I'm going to ask Randy again if he thinks we can push it out to 120 days. And I just need to make sure that you all understand that risk. Councilor Lucero?
I'll be more than happy to give the floor to Mr. Audio before my comments, if you like.
Whatever. Why don't you go ahead, Councilor Lucero, and then Randy can weigh in.
Here's the thing. We've been working on this particular issue since it first came out, trying to protect the people of this village.
Yes, we have.
And the state said it itself. They're driving the car as they're building it. I think we're trying to meet some crazy deadlines, trying to put legislation in place that does just that fulfills the will of our constituents and fulfills and protects this village. I think we do need a little bit more leeway when it comes to the time frame on which we can properly write something that does everything we need it to do. So I'm in favor of the 90. I'm also in favor of the 120, just to make sure that we cover it. I think we should be given that latitude, just for the mere point that we have been. This has been just thrust upon us. Thank you.
Councilor Burkett. And then Councilor Parker.
I think I agree with Councilor Lucero. There's zero point in doing a moratorium if we're going to do it for such a short period where we can't actually improve something during that moratorium. And 30 days wouldn't give us that. 90 days most likely wouldn't give us that. So I do agree that if we do a moratorium, we have to do it for a period that at least gives us reasonable time to deliver an outcome from that moratorium.
Councilor Parker?
Mayor Roque, councilors, Mr. Audio, if you could answer the question on it. If we do extend this out and it is challenged and we lose, what are the ramifications of that other than a financial ramification? Do any of the ordinances that we pass or try to put into place during that moratorium, do those become null and void, or could you explain that?
Of course, Councilor Parker, councilors and mayor, the issue is we are taking away from the citizens of our community that currently have been given an opportunity to apply for a cannabis producing license in the A1 and A2 area by the state. We would be taking that away from them for a temporary period. The longer the period, the more likely a challenge would occur. And the result of that challenge would be we may have to pay some damages to them, and the moratorium would be overturned. And we would go back to the current status quo of our ordinance that we passed earlier regulating marijuana production. But we are opening the village to risk with the longer moratorium we put in place. We felt 90 days was as long as we could go. My opinion that 90 days would probably not face a challenge was disagreed with by the municipal league attorney, who happens to be our insurer. So, I mean, it's worth listening to their attorney's advice, because my opinion is always based upon the what is reasonable. Here, the shorter period we have, the more reasonable it is as far as those people are concerned who currently have a right to apply for a permit. We're taking that away from them. So you don't want to do it for an extended time. I don't disagree with any comments that have been made so far that we have the ticking clock that has been beating over our head the whole time we've been working on this. And that was a great analogy that was brought up by Councilor Cerro, that we're basically building a moving car at the present time. Both of those are true, but we have to face and deal with the state of the law given to us by the state of New Mexico. So the consequences are the moratorium would be invalidated, and we may face a damage claim.
Councilor Murray?
Thank you,
and then
Mayor.
Councilor Knight, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go
okay,
ahead.
go ahead. No, Councilor Knight, go ahead.
I was just wondering, are there any actions being proposed to our legislators so they do address some of our concerns, as well as other municipalities' concerns in the January session? Do you know of anything?
I know that I think it's going to be up to us. I have had some preliminary conversations with the director of the Municipal League. I also will reach out to every single one of our legislators. I think if we decide as a council that we should put together a call of some items that we want to, we haven't usually done that as a community. But for instance, we could say that we are going to do whatever we can to lobby whoever we've got to try and help similarly situated communities such as ourselves, who have very light zoning, agricultural in nature with houses on it, but in order to see what we could do to get more protection for our community.
I think that's a great idea.
Councilor Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. So what I got from Damon, or Representative Damon, from the last council meeting, that there is not going to be any action taken by the state in this 30-day session, that is just too short, and they're not going to consider anything from them. Also, we're not denying anybody the use of their land. All we're doing is postponing the licensees and applications. We're not going to deny anything unless, we get something in place. And I think, Randy, you still need to answer Councilor Parker's question. If we enact a ordinance between now and the moratorium, and the ordinance passes and is in place, and the moratorium gets overturned, does that automatically make that ordinance null and void?
No, it does not. If we passed an ordinance while the moratorium was in place and a judge hadn't invalidated the moratorium, then that ordinance would stand, and it would have to be challenged on its own merits.
Counselor Burkett.
With this moratorium, in its current nature, maybe we are, but I don't think that the citizens were given the right specifically to grow cannabis in A1 and A2. They were given the right to grow cannabis. So if we still leave the opportunity of growing cannabis in commercial zones, I don't think we're taking away the right that they were given by the state. It may be an interpretation that's up to challenge, but I think as long as we leave a little bit of a window open, then it certainly minimizes that.
You know, Counselor Burkett, that exact question was asked at the question and answer that was offered by the Municipal League last week. And I guess that you weren't able to attend, but they asked, what about areas where it's zoned agricultural, but there's residents on it? What can we do? And they said they'd given very careful consideration to it. And they thought under the law, if you could grow alfalfa, you could grow cannabis. So that's our problem.
Mayor, this is Councilor Murray.
Yes, Councilor Murray.
I think that we should stick to the moratorium.
I
Because
agree.
we're coming up
I
on two
agree.
other items for discussion, I mean, about the amendments. So let's just discuss the moratorium and let's work on that and we'll get to the other parts.
Right, good thought. Any other comments regarding, yes, Counselor Lucero.
Just one more point, Mayor, and this is something that I think we've all had to deal with as far as, you know, trying to regulate it here in this village, was with the information that has literally trickled out of the state. And here we are trying to put in ordinances and legislation that protect this village, yet with little information that just trickles out. I think we would be given a little more latitude when it comes to that, at least some firmer ground to stand on when we are trying to put ordinances in place to protect the village. I think that been another issue from this state.
My sense, and I'm going to ask Randy, but my sense is that he would do his very best and thinks he probably could defend this moratorium on those and other grounds. Is that correct, Randy? I mean, that's why you.
Of course. And I do feel like we have a very legitimate public interest in ensuring that there are no adverse effects to the citizens that live in anywhere close proximity to marijuana grows and marijuana production. So absolutely. And we've crafted this to the best of our ability to allow us to defend it that way. I just simply, there's no guarantees in life. You know, it doesn't work that way. And so any citizen who has the intent to file an application and now can't could challenge it. And then we'll let a court decide. I mean, that's what we've been talking about the whole time. Village needs to understand that it can come with consequences, even though it is, in many people's opinion, the right thing to do.
Right. I think what we have right now is we have a motion and a second on the floor. I think the moratorium as written calls for 90 days. There was a suggestion that time limit be expanded. It does also, our council believes it does increase our risk. So I don't know. We have a motion and yes, Councilor Parker.
Mayor, vote councilors, I had a quick question. And I think that Randy or Mr. Audio already answered it in terms of the longer this moratorium goes out, the harder it potentially could be to defend on there. But Councilor Murray, how many days did we need to add to this to get that extra council meeting added to it?
Yeah, Councilor Parker, I think it was 5, because I think what 90 days does, it puts us 2 days shy of another council meeting in February. Since we've got 31 days in both December and January, I think. So maybe I'm wrong, but I think that was, we come up shy.
Okay, I think Councilor Audio.
Well, and I think we should all keep in mind that while I wouldn't want to schedule a special meeting on Christmas Eve, we do have time in the upcoming months for this important legislation. And if we can put together an ordinance that we think protects the citizens as much as we can and will survive a challenge during that period, we could certainly have special meetings for introduction and action if the mayor governing body so choose.
Thank you. All right, does that answer your question, Tyson?
Absolutely. Yes, perfect. Crystal clear.
Okay. So I think we now have a motion and a second on the floor. As to the original time, 90 days, it's been suggested maybe bump it up a little bit. On the other hand, we could have special meetings within that time period to see if we could go, what we could do. So at this point, what have I got? How do you wish to proceed on the time? I'm thinking we want to take a vote on the moratorium. What is the pleasure of this body as to extending, changing the time of the moratorium? I think I know where you stand, Councilor Murray.
Well, I mean, I would not be opposed to a 5-day extension to 95. That still gets us into a 4th council meeting. We can do special council meetings like Randy suggests. And I think that is a good option for us that we need to, but I would like to have that 4th council meeting as an option in that moratorium.
All right, do we have a second on that proposed amendment? Okay, I see Zach Burkett. All right, and then, all right, so I think what we need to do procedurally is we'll take a vote on the moratorium with a 95-day limit as written, but with the amendment of a 95-day limit. And I'm going to obviously take a roll call vote. Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Waldman?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
All right, that passes. And so now we're going to go back to the original motion, which is to pass a moratorium resolution 2139 for a period of 95 days on application for licensing or permitting of commercial cannabis activities. I believe I have a motion and a second, so I will now go ahead and take a roll call vote. Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Waldman?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
All right. That item passes. And I do think that the body is well aware that, you know, there are risks because of the law that was passed on us, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we make this as protective as possible for our community while preserving other rights that have been granted by the state. Councilor Audio?
Mayor, after the way this has fleshed out with the moratorium and looking at the next 2 agenda items, it would make a whole lot of sense to me to roll the discussion into the discussion about whether or not to do an introduction of this proposed new ordinance. I don't see them really being separate at this point unless a councilor or you see that we should take up 2 separate items. It seems like we could move to amend the agenda to alleviate the discussion as a separate item.
I have no objection to that. That makes sense to me. Do I have a motion to that effect? I think I see one from Councilor Burkett.
Well,
Councilor Burkett so moves. Do I have a second?
Yep.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. All right, let's, should we take a vote on that, Randy? Randy?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Waldman?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
yes.
All right. So at this point, we have now rolled items 4 and 5. Is that correct? 4 and 5 into a single item. And I think I would like to have, let's keep the same organization. So I'm going to ask Randy to speak to these 2 items, and then we will go to public comment.
Mayor, councilors, this is the item that causes me the greatest concern. not because it's of ill intent, but because we are dealing with a very broad state law that limits all local jurisdictions to take action to prohibit any growing of marijuana. Everyone sees this as a potential commercial use, but the way the state law is written, it is an agricultural use, and that is our main problem. Mr. Wentz's statements that were made during public comment were spot on. We've discussed that before. The changes that have occurred within the community, we essentially now are a residential, the village is a residential community that also allows for agricultural uses. But that mixed use causes the state to say it's agricultural and you can grow on that property. So that's the rock and a hard place. Any of you that listened to the Municipal League presentation and their view of this, they were even a little bit more gloom and doom about the potential for legislation like ours than I am. But needless to say, I fear for the village coffers, because anyone who chooses to challenge this may have a large opportunity for a damage claim. And as I said, it may not be coverable in its entirety by the state. And we are certainly taking this action with eyes wide open if we did this. And I just don't think that the village should incur such risk, in my legal opinion. So I believe we should table this item until we can come back with a proposal as discussed under the prior discussion in the period of the moratorium, to do a action that would protect the village as much as possible without directly violating state law. One thing I want to address at this time, as was pointed out by Councilor Burkett, keeping us on point in the prior discussion, was this 3% of the village that we maintain as commercial is not the real test here that we have to be looking at. The test is the 97% of agricultural land and the owners of that land that would possibly want to produce marijuana. Those are the people who will have damage claims against the village if we prohibit such a use. And that is of great concern to me and the other lawyers at the Municipal League. And I think we should be very cautious. Thank you very much.
Certainly. I think, Randy, it would be good to have public comment, and then we could come back to the idea of tabling these items. Yes? We don't want to cut off public comment. I will say for Melanie that if people have already discussed these items and it seems really duplicative, then we'll talk about that. But go ahead, please.
Okay. The first on the list asking to speak was Mr. J. Block. I'm not sure. We did have some people join us since our last comment. I'm not sure if Mr. Block was able to join us. Okay.
He's got a pretty strong voice. I think if he were here,
Yep.
we would know it.
That's what I understand.
Yes.
All right. And then Mr. Wirtz, did you have something in addition to what you've already spoken to earlier?
Yeah, I'd like to speak specifically about this. I'm in favor of amending 2106 to reinstate and to improve the protections, which would ultimately disallow commercial cannabis cultivation on A1 and A2. And quite honestly, as I'm listening to this discussion, something that's troubling me very much is that our village legal counsel is providing strong input specifically to give us guidance in one particular matter. What keeps recurring is that he seems to be significantly worried about the fact that we may be creating some sort of a challenge or a problem for somebody for their permissive use of their property, as being strong-armed effectively by the state of New Mexico to say, you must do this you must allow this on agricultural properties. I don't believe that this counselor, our legal representative, lives in Corrales, and that probably makes no matter, but I prefer to have people that have skin in the game to have the ultimate say-so over this. Now, if there's ever going to be a hill that we're going to crawl up on and decide that this is where we're going to battle, this is going to be one of them. The state has overreached in a sudden and rapid manner to demand that we do this on our agricultural properties that are A1 and A2. We have some issues here. As I mentioned before, our P&Z laws are antiquated. And the problem with our laws with P&Z is not that they're overly restrictive, it's that we don't have enough different categories. We need something like residential 1 or residential 2, and it's probably too late to make those changes. Nobody wants to live next to a big facility that's sucking water out of the ground and is stinking up the air. We know that the scrubbers don't work. It doesn't work for Intel. People in Denver, they have issued a moratorium against cannabis facilities near residential areas. They're at a benefit because they have residential zones that we don't have. I'd like to see us try to approach this maybe from a creative way. Can we do something that says something along the lines that, you know, crops with that are high density or high power use, closed air, anything that has to do with Schedule 1 drugs? Are there any creative avenues that we can take towards this? I got to tell you, we're at risk of the cannabis folks creating lawsuit against the village. We are also at risk of pissed off villagers creating a legal challenge and attacking the coffers. I'm done. Thank you.
Melanie?
Okay. Mr. George Wright, do you have anything in addition to what you've already presented to the council?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Sorry, I can't get my videos working, I think. Listen, I had to sign up for 2 items. That's 6 minutes. You're only going to give me 3. That's not fair. Look, don't table this item. Do not table this. Let's vote on this thing tonight. And Frank hit it right on the head. Those NML lawyers and Randy, they don't live in this village. Besides that, their legal opinion is only that, a legal opinion. Now, we had restricted cannabis and commercial cannabis in zones A1 and A2, and it will not put us in legal jeopardy. We did it for 3.5 years, not one successful challenge. What's different under the Cannabis Regulation Act? Let me tell you, the answer is nothing, nothing. The definition of cannabis in the act does not even mention agriculture. Not only that, nowhere within the entire law is cannabis defined as an agricultural product. Other municipalities, other states protect their people. People in Los Ranchos are looking at A1, A2, A3 restrictions. People in Colorado are protecting people. A favorable judgment in Torrance County. Let's not let the lawyers stampede us into doing something stupid. Now, I appreciate Randy.
So offensive. I'm sorry. So offensive.
I worked with Randy. I appreciate him. He's a good lawyer. I happen to disagree with him about this.
Yes.
But he's not a legislator. Don't come into to a legislative meeting and try to legislate. 6 councilors are the corporate governance of this village. It's up to them to legislate, not lawyers. The act says the local jurisdiction can limit density of licenses and operating times consistent with neighborhood uses. Neighborhood uses is zoning. We're doing that with A1 and A2 restrictions. The village code requires us to take care of our people, promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the residents of the village by controlling the use of land, that's zoning, so that it is developed in harmony with existing uses. Use of land, that's zoning. There's other places this can be done. There's no valid reason for not supporting legislation to protect homes and neighbors from commercial cannabis operations. Don't let the threat of litigation, didn't happen in 3.5 years, may or may not happen, and Frank was right on. Nothing keeping us from suing the village for not protecting us. Thank you.
Melanie? You're muted.
Sorry. Next, Mr. Ron Reeder.
Hello, am I on?
Yes, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Ron Reeder and I live at 19 Santa Maria in the village. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. In my opinion, the governing body is making a mistake by attempting to prevent or restrict the growing of cannabis in Corrales, especially right now. Cannabis is currently a hot button issue in New Mexico, both politically and financially. Almost anything we do to limit cannabis growing in the village has a high chance of resulting in political pushback from Santa Fe and lawsuits by well-funded commercial enterprises. Instead, I suggest we should try to regulate all intensive agriculture. Intensive agriculture is an industry that attempts to grow a large amount of crop on a small amount of land in a minimum amount of time. It's heavily used in Europe, particularly in the Netherlands. The crop may be lettuce, strawberries, cannabis, or almost anything else. Here are a few of the techniques used. Grow a crop within a structure, control the temperature, atmospheric carbon dioxide, light, fertilizer, or water to produce multiple harvests of a crop in a year. This is a complex undertaking and requires careful control of safety systems. It usually uses a great deal of electrical energy. As you can see, intensive agriculture is very unlike the traditional agricultural methods that have been used for hundreds of years in Corrales. Both are commercial in nature, but intensive agriculture is more like an industrial activity. The 2009 comprehensive plan says what you, the governing body, should be doing for the village. Quote, the governing body should encourage, preserve, and enhance the rural, agricultural, historical, and cultural character of the village. Manage development of appropriate commercial activities within the village, which preserve and enhance its semi-rural agricultural character and its economic diversity. It was traditional agriculture that the authors of our land use ordinances had in mind when they created our agricultural and rural residential zones. They decided that Corraleños homes could and should be intermixed with traditional agriculture, not with intensive agriculture, which did not exist at the time. Since intensive agriculture is so different, it's reasonable for you to regulate how and where in the village intensive agriculture may occur. In the coming months, I suggest you should concentrate on regulating all intensive agriculture, not just cannabis. I believe you'll be on firmer political and legal ground and will be doing a more complete job of meeting the goals set out for you in the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, next I have Miss Elaine Manicki. Do you have anything in addition to what you've already presented to the council?
I would like to say that I do like this creative approach that Ron has suggested. You need to understand, first of all, that I come from a great deal of strife when it comes to village issues. I had a road put right next to my house within 5 minutes when the grader came through, and with no warning, no nothing. And so my passion and my ability to speak to things like this comes from a very personal place. I do believe that we don't want to step on anybody's toes, certainly, but I have also been in different situations where when the village wanted to have something happen, they changed the zoning on certain pieces of property just like that overnight, again, without any information to villagers or explanation or advance warning. So I like this creative way of doing business. I think it has a powerful way to protect all of our all of our village residents. I do think we do need to look at that zoning very carefully and maybe make some of those changes. But the intensive farming is something that, you know, this village isn't going to be growing crops for the rest of the world or the rest of the state of New Mexico. And for us to continue to support our comprehensive plan, I think is why people feel compelled and are extremely passionate about this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next I have Ms. Pam Garfield.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, hi there. Okay, I'm sorry I don't have the camera, but my name is Pam Garfield. I live at 7532 Corrales Road, and I believe the issue of medical cultivation within the village can be met with urgent protective ordinances to preserve and protect our A1, A2 zones before it is too late by reinstating Ordinance 18002. My family and I urge you to restrict commercial cannabis operations in the A1 and A2 zones and trust that you, our elected officials, will see to it that our homes and families are protected from an industry that can negatively impact all of us. I personally take issue with the comment that the municipal league stated that cannabis is like a crop like alfalfa. I believe they could be wrong because medical cannabis has identified itself over the years as a pharmaceutical product. And I don't think that the USDA has a crop identification code through the USDA to signify that it is like any other agricultural crop. Tonight, you as our leaders of our village have a perfect opportunity to blaze a trail for New Mexico and not only protect our village from this invasive threat, but also provide a shining example for our state. Please stand your ground and not be intimidated by the state, attorneys, or politicians who do not necessarily share our same values of wanting to preserve and protect the culture of Corrales. But more importantly, to protect our children growing up in Corrales, to be free from a grow house next to them, which could threaten their safety from an industry that is known to pose a threat to public health in terms of exposure to violent crime and property crimes, which I believe the north part of Corrales may have already experienced. Compliance to follow the state and be intimidated by the threats of lawsuits that is being advised by some politicians who are attorneys themselves and other attorneys do not stand for what our commitment should be tonight to ban medical cannabis from A1 and A2 zones. Please take a strong stand to continue to protect Corrales' heritage, not only for today, but for future generations. Thank you.
Okay, next I have Mrs. Kathleen Streeb. Do you have additional comments other than what you've already presented to the council?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, well, first I read a peer-reviewed journal, a narrative review on environmental impacts of cannabis cultivation. And in it, it talks about, it is envisioned that technologies such as, or here it is, hold on, I got it. My point is, there's no environmental impact being done on our community. There are lots of peer-reviewed journals. There's lots of information about marijuana, cannabis, and what it does. One of the things it releases are VOCs into the environment, which actually adds to greenhouse gas emissions. And in the Corrales comprehensive plan, the purpose of the comprehensive plan, it states that it should establish the philosophical base and reasoning from which future zoning, subdivision, infrastructure, and land use decisions will be determined. There's a page in there that actually talks about reducing greenhouse emissions. That's a big topic. And I know many of you have been very active in environmentalism. And I think our state rushed through this marijuana law And we are facing the consequences and put pressure on you, good people, to force legislation that, because the state has mandated this and did not do what Colorado did and allow the community the opportunity to opt out, I think we need to petition as citizens, work with our counselors, and we need to ask our representatives to change this. The other issue is crime. I met Spencer Comedina. My condolences to his family. When I first moved here, my daughter was horseback riding in that area, right on the Comedina farm. And I'm sorry for the loss of him. And I'm sorry that it's 19 years that we have our first homicide in Corrales. And guess what? It's related to someone who's growing marijuana. And I read in the Corrales comment that he was also a co-founder or co-partner in the swap in selling the marijuana off Corrales Road. And I just think that's something our state legislators need to know. I don't know if they're going to keep statistics now on crimes regarding marijuana. The other thing is, my neighborhood had crime, the property values. Property values will go down with these policies. So I ask that you would vote tonight and approve Resolution 2140. I think you need to take the risk, village councilors, for the people and protect and fulfill.
Thank you. Your time's up.
Thank you.
Melanie?
Next, we have Fred Hashimoto. Do you have anything additional other than what you've already presented to the
Yes,
council?
I do. Please vote to publish and post this amendment and not table it. Why? For at least 3 reasons. One, it reflects what residential neighborhoods, which represent the large majority of Corrales residents, would want. They would not want a commercial cannabis grow facility or business next door, which would adversely affect their property values and quality of life. Some of this has sadly already happened in the village. 2, it will be a stake in the ground, a step in the right direction, and a commitment to move ahead to change the current very permissive cannabis ordinance. And 3, the village is not going to get sued for merely publishing and posting. We hear a lot about potential risks to the village. They are important. But what about costs to the neighbors? Aren't they important too? The amendment has some vulnerabilities. However, any action or non-action on this topic has vulnerability. Council can work against possible lawsuits challenging the amendment in at least a couple of ways. Number 1, sharing notes and collaborating with the trustees and attorneys of Los Ranchos, which plans to ban commercial cannabis activities in the A1, 2, and 3 zones. And 2, consider consulting Katie Duig's office. She's an attorney and a state representative for Los Ranchos and was a legislative sponsor for the Cannabis Regulation Act. She has advised Los Ranchos. Shifting gears a bit, a possible alternative and more litigation-resistant approach might be to allow commercial cannabis growing in A1 and A2, but to significantly limit numbers of commercial plants grown. For example, A1, 20 plants, A2, 40 plants. Experienced growers wouldn't bother with such small numbers. They're used to growing many hundreds to thousands of plants. They would also scoff at the cannabis producer micro business licensing annual fee of $500 when growing 100 plants or less. This alternative is legal because it does not, quote, completely prohibit, unquote, any licensee, but merely limits what he can commercially grow. The state limits plant numbers for individuals and households. The Cannabis Regulation Act nowhere specifies numbers of plants a commercial grower is entitled to grow. Corrales Ordinance 18002 specified 0 plants. Although this alternative would allow some commercial cannabis growing in A1 and A2, de facto, it wouldn't be much different from the 12 plants a household can already legally grow. It's simple. A1, 20, A2, 40. Again, please publish and post this important amendment. It's a big step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just got word that Mr. Jay Block was able to join us. Are you on the call?
Hello, Commissioner.
You might be muted.
You are muted.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you. Commissioner Block, are you frozen?
Yeah, the sound is not coming through very well. Can you hear me? I can't see anybody else.
I can see you. We can see you.
I am not muted.
No, you are not muted.
No, I'm not muted.
You're not
Okay.
muted. We can hear you, Commissioner Block. No, we can't hear you anymore. I don't.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Hey, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you all for being on here. My name is Commissioner Jay Block. I represent Corrales and part of Rio Rancho on the County Commission. I appreciate the mayor's service and those city councilors, and I thank all the citizens for speaking up. I am not a fan of these type of Zoom meetings because I have a hard time hearing my fellow citizens, and I'm sure you have a hard time hearing me. And this is such an important issue where it should be heard in person so the citizens can have better access to the elected officials in our great village. Madam Mayor, fellow councilors, I have had numerous people call me regarding this issue that want to keep marijuana out of zones A1, A2 for numerous reasons. This is a bad idea. This will change the culture of Corrales that we all deeply love. We need to stand up as elected officials for the people of Corrales, not those in Santa Fe or those special interests. I implore you to keep A1 and A2, the integrity of A1 and A2 the way it is. This issue has moved very fast from what I understand, and it needs to be thoroughly studied to see the effect on people's health, on property values, and how it will affect the culture of Corrales. I want to say thank you so much for having me here. And again, I appreciate my good friend, the mayor, and the councilors of the village councilors and all the people of Corrales. I am honored to serve you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Commissioner. Councilor Knight, but you're muted.
Oh, Commissioner J. Block, hi. Is the commission doing anything to help with the concerns right now? Are you talking to people up in Santa Fe as a group of commissioners from Sandoval County?
We lost you. Good timing, Commissioner, because we cannot hear your response. Where
did he go?
I don't know. He kind of disappeared, but I think he will weigh in.
I think we
if he
lost
can get
him.
back. I do
Yeah.
think we lost him.
Okay.
Anybody else, Melanie?
The remainder are all emails that I received. The first was the second half of Miss Gail Bacon's email from earlier with regard to business item number 5.
Okay.
Please pass a resolution banning commercial cannabis activities in A1 and A2 zones. This is basically a reincarnation of an earlier 2018 ordinance, 1802, which instituted the banning. Unfortunately, this earlier ordinance was overturned by the New Mexico Cannabis Regulation Act, passed earlier this year in the legislature. I would like to see this reincarnation of the earlier ban restored by passing Resolution 2140. I believe that adding a commercial establishment such as this in the far north area of Corrales would be detrimental to the village, particularly and tragically since we have seen how drugs such as this seem to be tied to criminal acts frequently, although the revenue adding aspects may appeal to the village council. The village has always enjoyed a reputation as a safe community for all. I would appreciate the councilors giving their protection to our village by passing resolutions 2139 and 2140. Okay, and that is that one. Next, we have a statement from Mr. Dennis Rossback. Intensive agriculture, also known as intensive farming, is a type of agriculture, both of crop plants and of animals, with higher levels of input and output per unit of agricultural land area. Forms that rely heavily on industrial methods are characterized by innovations designed to increase yield. Techniques include planting multiple crops per year, reducing the frequency of fallow years, controlling temperature, light, and humidity, and improving cultivars. It also involves increased use of fertilizers, plant growth regulators, and pesticides. Intensive farms are increasingly prevalent worldwide. Structures associated with intensive agriculture, normally greenhouses, often utilize HVAC, artificial lighting, chemical fertilization, CO2 enrichment, and other means of enhancing growth that require electrical power, plumbing, and permanent structures on farmed property. Such operations proliferate large structures that destroy the rural character of our historic village. It matters not whether the crop is strawberries, tomatoes, cannabis, or another product. Proliferation of large buildings obscuring significant angular fields of view in residential areas is not compatible with the stated objectives of the village, independent of possible impacts on water, air, and drainage. Accordingly, rules for controlling size and location of such intensive agriculture structures need to recognize the industrial look and feel of such activities compared with traditional agriculture. The Planning and Zoning Commission and/or the Village Council should act quickly to prevent the destruction of years of effort in preserving the character of the village by those seeking quick profit. Such actions should, however, be even-handed and not discriminate based on the intended agricultural product, as long as recognized as legal by the state of New Mexico. I personally find the prospect of living in a forest of greenhouses to be repugnant and urge our councilors to take quick action on this front.
Thank you.
And the final email of the evening comes from Ann Kuntz. Dear Mayor and Village Councilors, I am writing once again to express my opposition to legal production of cannabis in the A1 and A2 residential areas of Corrales. Ordinance 1802 did just that and should be reinstated to protect all residential areas of Corrales. Corrales del Norte is the first subdivision to be adversely affected by a pot farm, the Comedina property. Corrales del Norte was developed in the early 1980s, and some of the homes are approaching 35 years old. People have invested fortunes in their properties, which has made CDN a premier residential neighborhood in Corrales and a huge source of tax income. A moratorium should be declared in order for you to fix the horrible amendment that is in effect now. No one has considered the effects of the Comedina pot facility on us. We have experienced and lived with the nuisance of a pot facility, i.e. the odor that is so strong that there were many evenings this past summer when we could not spend time on our portal or sleep with our windows open. Some of the beautiful elements of living in Corrales. You were all invited to come down and see for yourself, but no one did. There are 10 residences outside the Comedina farm, which should result in minimal traffic. However, the traffic on Camino de Corrales del Norte has increased dramatically since the pot farm was constructed a couple of years ago, i.e. employees, customers, partners, etc. There will be property value issues, crime will increase, roadside trash is already an issue. We were here first and no one has considered the effects of the pot facility on us. What can you do to protect us and or the other residents in the village? We have been damaged and we would like to know what you are going to do for us. Sincerely, Ann Kuntz.
Thank you. I think maybe Jay Block is back and maybe he'd like to answer Councilor Knight's question about what county commissioners are doing to attempt to get more flexibility for us on a municipal level. You there? I'm really trying here, Jay. I think you are muted now.
Madam Mayor, could you, or Councilor Knight, could you repeat that, please?
Yes, she can. Go ahead, Councilor Knight. You're muted.
One of these days. I was
I know
wondering what the Sandoval County Commission was
If
doing
I understand the question,
realities. What? I mean, we've talked to our legislator, Damon Eli's come to speak to us. Is the county commission helping or getting a hold of legislators up in Santa Fe or talking to the governor about issues surrounding the municipalities that don't want to have the commercial growing? Were you able to hear me?
You know, I don't want to cut Jay Block off, never in any way, but I think we may need to take his answer offline and get it to everybody, because I just don't think his technology is working very well right now. Yes, hello. Poor little guy. Hello, hello. Jay, would you be willing to, because we're just really having trouble with hearing you and getting your answer, but basically what Mel wants to know is, what are you trying to do to kind of help convince the powers that be in Santa Fe that we need more control on a municipal level here?
Yes, Madam Mayor. So the county the county attorney, I've talked to the county attorney on this from the materials that I've received from citizens. And I'm not sure if the county attorney has talked to the village attorney, but we are looking at this, and I would recommend while the attorneys take a look at what can be done regarding this particular issue, is to either table this issue for now and put it off at a later date, and let the county and the village work together to discuss this issue. I think that would probably be the best course that we could do right now, is table it and let's work together as a county and a village.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would like to say, as we've finished public comment, that this is my concern, because I do appreciate all the citizens who've come forward and have taken the time to write and tell us their concerns. And I want to say thank you. And I want to say that I understand. The goal for us is to protect our community, but passing something that we think is illegal doesn't protect anyone. And I would prefer that, since we've passed a moratorium that gives us the time to work with everyone to find out what we can do, both legal, legislative, whatever options we have, then I think we wouldn't risk forwarding a law that we actually know fails. And if that one fails, then we would be left without protection. Wouldn't be like the moratorium. If that failed, then we would fall back to an ordinance. But that isn't going to happen. I would really suggest that, since everyone here, all the counselors, are well aware of all the risks that we face, and we have a very passionate desire, I think, to protect our community and to work hard on better ways to do that within the kind of rotten hand we've been dealt, that I do think tabling it, because it can be brought right back at a later date, and we have passed that moratorium, you have, which I think gives us time to really dive down and really consider this. So I would ask for that motion if someone would offer it. Is any counselor willing to do that? Yes, Councilor Waldman.
Yes, I move that we table until a possible date certain for further discussion.
All right, do I have a second on that motion?
I second.
Okay, Councilor Knight is going to second that. All right, let's take a vote on that, understanding that then our goal is going to be to work as quickly and as efficiently as we can to get ourselves the best possible protection for our community. Councilor
Mayor, this is Councilor Murray.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was calling for a vote.
I'm sorry. Well, it's time for a little bit of discussion on the motion.
Sure.
Okay, so you know my stance right now. I am in favor of reinstating sections 2 and 3 out section 8 or ordinance 1802. The reason being is that we can legislate the daylights out of this, and we're going to come up with loopholes, and we're going to get sued one way or the other. Prohibiting cannabis in A1 and A2, I think, has good legal standing because one, we've already done it. It was done in 18002. We had it for more than 3 years. The other part of it is there is no definition of cannabis anywhere in the state statutes or the House Bill 2. And it's a pharmaceutical. There's no given about it. It's a psychoactive drug that, like alcohol, it affects your mental being. And I just don't think that I don't think we're going to incur anything because one, as Randy said, okay, so we're looking at 97% of the people who live in the A1 and A2. Well, I say 96% of them are going to grow cannabis. Also, the fact is, it's interesting that with cannabis, growing it as much as you can, I can only brew 100 gallons of beer and wine, but I can't distill liquor. I can't go down to Wagner's and buy a bushel of cannabis. I have to go to a licensed facility to do that. I can only have a small amount on me, whereas I can walk into a grocery store, buy all the tobacco products I want, or go over to Total Wine, pick up cases of beer and liquor. So cannabis is not an agricultural product. And I think we've got good grounds to make it stick. We're not completely banning cannabis. We're allowing it in commercial areas. We also can allow it in home ox if they want to go that route. We have home ox as a commercial entity in the village, and it's throughout the village. It is a commercial entity. It is limited. It's limited to what you can do, but we do allow it within A1 and A2. So
thank you.
Okay.
We understand your position. Got it. I would point out that 1802, the law that was passed in 2018 was when recreational marijuana was illegal. All I'm saying is that we have a vehicle now with a moratorium, and we can do good, reliable work, and we won't get our streams mixed up with some things going forward. We would be able to get the best possible law on the books to protect our community. And I thought that's, it seems to me that's why we gave ourselves the breathing room.
Well, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to publish and post. It ain't going to cost us anything. It just gives you another month where we can work out things. But
okay, understood. Understood. I believe there is a motion to table on the floor. There's been a second, so I'm going to take a vote. Councilor Parker?
Mayor Roque, I just had a quick question.
Sure.
Before we vote. And Mr. Audio, just to clarify on here, with the moratorium in place, whatever legislation we come up with before the end of it is what legislation will be in place for people applying during this moratorium, correct? So if someone came in and applied during this moratorium, they have to wait. But when they come out of the waiting period, they will be regulated by whatever we decide on at the end of the moratorium, correct? So
essentially, what will happen is the law that's in place at the time that their application is heard. It's a little bit confusing when you say they can apply, but it's not going to be heard. Their application isn't grandfathered.
Correct.
I think is the way to say it. So the moratorium will be in place if we pass new legislation and the effective date of the legislation happens before their application is heard, then that is the law that's going to apply.
So from a legal standpoint, there's no passing something today versus passing something 3 weeks from now makes no difference in terms of the moratorium, correct?
Oh, correct. And particularly, we're talking about introducing an ordinance that is a version of how to regulate marijuana in A1 and A2 is the subject of all this debate. We can either come to a consensus on another method, or we can reintroduce this at a later date. We're just leaving our options open.
No, that it just makes sense for time for the village and for the county to come together, because strength in numbers, we all know that works. So if we really are going to fight the good fight on this, it seems like we want to have everyone together as a cohesive unit to push forward, instead of just us taking a stand right now and hoping that other people will come on to it. So I totally respect what Commissioner Block was saying with tabling and what other people have said with tabling. So that's my thoughts.
All right, so let me get back to that motion. We have a motion and a second to table. Counselor Parker, how do you vote?
Aye.
Counselor Waldman,
Aye.
Counselor Lucero,
No.
Counselor Knight,
Aye.
Counselor Burkett,
No.
Counselor Murray.
No.
How does the vote stand, clerk?
3-3.
All right, I vote yes to table, so it will be tabled. Okay, so I think we're all going to do good work together, and I'm looking forward to doing something really special for our community and protecting them as best as we can. So I think at this point,
Mayor?
let's see, we're going to move on. Yes,
Mayor, could I just address one point that one of the citizens raised dealing with environmental impact studies?
yes.
Shortly after one of our previous meetings, I spoke with the Environmental Law Center, and there is no provision in state law for an environmental impact study. And since the marijuana is still illegal on a federal level, there is no provision in federal law which would address that. So I just wanted to get that on the record.
All right, thank you very much. You know, it's just one more wrinkle, right, in this very convoluted process. We're now going to move on to item J, which is a confirmation of an appointment, Tony Messick for the Parks and Recreation Commission. Mr. Messick is a long-term volunteer, and he would like to continue to serve. So I would take a motion as to his appointment.
I move that we accept Tony Messick's appointment to Parks and Rec.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? I'm sorry?
Second it.
Thank you, Zach. All right. Counselor Parker,
Aye.
Counselor Waldman,
Aye.
Counselor Murray,
Aye.
Counselor Burkett,
Aye.
Counselor Lucero,
Aye.
Counselor Knight.
Aye.
All right, my friends, we are getting close to the end here. At this time, the council is going to go into a closed executive session pursuant to the provision of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act adopted by the Village Council, NMSA 1978, Section 15(1)H8. It is to discuss the potential purchase, acquisition, or disposal of specific real property by the public body. Do I have a motion to close?
Move to close.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. That was Counselor Lucero, and who seconded that?
Woman.
Thank you, Counselor Woolman. All right, I will take a vote now to close. Counselor Parker,
Aye.
Counselor Waldman,
Aye.
Counselor Murray.
Aye.
Counselor Burkett,
Aye.
Counselor Lucero,
Aye.
Counselor Knight.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. This meeting is now closed, and we will be moving into a special room. I think we will be.
Sorry, I just need a minute to find everybody.
That's okay. I'd like to say, Melanie, I think you've been doing a pretty remarkable job tonight. We've had a lot of things going on. And
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's patience with me. Okay, I think I've got everybody now.
Thank you. You all back. I think the public, such as they are, have returned. I'm going to take a roll call vote to reopen the meeting. Counselor Parker,
Here.
Counselor Burkett,
Here.
Counselor Murray,
Here.
Counselor Waldman, Counselor Knight,
Here.
Here.
Counselor Lucero,
Here.
Counselor Waldman.
Here.
Thank you. All right, the meeting is now reopened. The matters discussed in the closed meeting were limited only to those matters specified in the motion for closure, and this statement that I'm making right now will be approved as part of the minutes under section 1015(1)G. There are no decisions that were made, so we have no action to take on the matters deliberated upon. All right, okay, at this point, we have reached, close to the end of the evening here. I think for the December 14th meeting, we will definitely be looking at our holiday schedule, our Open Meetings Act resolution. I think we may have a presentation from a senior housing group that wanted to come visit with us. I hope we're going to have we will, I hope, be able to meet in person so that we can have a presentation for Commander Latin. Melanie, do we have other items on the agenda? Oh, we are going to have a bond meeting to make sure that we get all the bond taken care of for the farmland. And that may need to be a special meeting because one of the buyers really needs to have that by the end of the calendar year. But Melanie, do we have anything else right now?
I think the only thing I wanted to make everyone aware of is that the deadline to register to vote in the precinct where you are going to run for office is December 1st. So if there's anybody that is wanting to run for a position that will be open in our March election, they'll need to make sure that they're registered to vote by December 1st. So
thank you.
Other than that.
Thank you very much. All right. Yes, Councilor Waldman. Councilor Waldman?
Yes, like request, we mentioned this. Yes, mentioned this at the last meeting about the possibility of having a presentation on the library annex.
Yes. Good add. I also wanted to mention that I'm so sorry. I'll get to Councilor Murray just while I can remember. On Thursday, there will be a Veterans Day memorial deal at Lawn Trotter Park at 11 o'clock in the morning. So I hope some of you may be able to come. Councilor Murray?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that maybe we should have some kind of an update between the county and our attorneys on cannabis because, all right, since we've tabled it, but we need to keep the public informed that we're at least trying to make some progress.
Oh, I think we'll be, I agree. Good point. And I think everybody is going to be like ducks with their legs underneath the water, paddling as fast as we can go to try to get something good. Any other items at this time? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you. I think that we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a very nice evening.
So moved.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you.
That's right.
That's right. It's turkey time.